Nscaler 454 here. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be working on the upper level where we're going to paint the track and ballast it. So stay tuned. I've already gone ahead and painted the foam a light tan brown color, where I just used a combination of 3 different acrylic paints. This is Jute, Pebble, and Khaki Tan. They're like $2 each, and I just randomly put them on. The idea is to cover up that foam, so if I miss any of the ground with my ground cover and it shows through, it's going to be a tan and not the pink color. Now after I'm done painting and ballasting, hopefully I can actually do some scenery, which I wasn't planning on doing, but if I do it now, I can actually throw this backdrop back on, and then I can set the whole layout back against the wall. So I need to prepare the track for paint, and the first thing I'm going to do is cover up these holes that I made for the screws, because I can't have those there when I'm ballasting, so I'm going to use some painter's tape just to cover those up. Of course, we don't want to get any paint on our contacts of our switches, so we're going to tape those up. And I'll paint these later by hand. To paint the track, I'm going to use my old Badger airbrush that I got when I was a kid for my birthday, connected to an air compressor that I got on Amazon. And the color I'm going to use is Model Masters Rail Tie Brown, which honestly I'm not sure I'm sold on the color, because it looks a little bit chocolatey greenish to me. But if I don't love the color, I have a few ideas to fix that later on. A little bit of water to thin it up. So we have the rail ties painted. It came out much darker than I expected. It doesn't have that chocolatey green color that it looks like when wet, so I'm very happy about that. Only now, all the rail ties are much too uniform. They're all the same color, and that's not very prototypical. So we need to add some variation to that with a few different colors. And I could do that with an airbrush, which would be probably pretty quick and easy, but I'm going to use more of a dry brush technique. This dry brush technique I'm going to use is exactly as it sounds. I'll take a small brush, load it with just a little bit of paint, wiping it down on a rag, and then go over the rail ties as I see fit. The paint colors I chose are buff, brown, some reefer gray flat, don't know if I'll use that, and some flat black. Again, not too sure how much I'll use of that. So we'll start with the brown, get a little bit of paint on it, dry it off roughly, and then come in here and then just paint a couple of rail ties here and there. What's nice about this is as the paint wears off of it, you can then even go down in like a streaky pattern like that. And it doesn't leave a whole lot of paint on it, but it does bring out some highlights. And then maybe we'll use some buff color. Yeah, that one came out quite bright like that. Like so, I'll put one here. And it's pretty much random on how I'm doing this. So, nothing special about it. And I'm really going to try to brighten up this siding right here because, you know, it's old, it's been used for many, many years, while as this is the main line, you know, it's going to be maintained a lot better. So this one would have seen the sun for many years, so all these wooden ties are going to be stained from the sun. All right, well, I'm going to work on this because it's going to be a time-consuming project, but I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. So the weathering is done. It took quite a while to do. I don't know if you can see the difference, but this siding right here should look a little bit lighter, more whiter rail ties than the main line here. It is a subtle difference, but it is there. We can now start painting the rails because we want that to have a rustic look. And for that, I'm going to be using this airbrush because it gives me a finer spray point. And you're probably wondering, how am I supposed to airbrush that without ruining all the work we did on the rail ties? Well, I made a template out of cardboard, and I should be able to just go along the track and spray that pretty quickly, and hopefully there's not too much overspray. As for corners and turnouts, I'm going to be doing that by hand with a fine tip brush. For color, I'm going to be using the rail tie brown that we already used and this Rapido Proto Paint Old Rust. You could use this by itself, but I found it was a little bit too red, so I'm going to mix it in a 50-50 mix with the rail tie brown. With the track painted, the question is, do we ballast the track before or after laying down some scenic ground cover? I don't know if there is a right or wrong answer to it, but I've decided to do it now beforehand. How to lay down the ballast? Well, we can do it manually with the little spoon or with this little ballast spreader. I'm going to try both and see which one I like best. The ballast I used is Arizona Rock and Mineral Northern Pacific Gray, mixed 1-to-1 with some fine sand that I sifted out.
did try brushing some glue to the sides of the roadbed, but I found very little benefit, so I abandoned the strategy. Using the ballast spreader did seem to work pretty good. I carefully ballasted the turnouts, ensuring they still operated correctly. A spray of isopropyl alcohol and I could saturate the ballast with a 3:1 water to glue mixture. I then used fine dirt for ground cover along the sides of the roadbed. After brushing on a glue layer, I sprinkled on some coarse dirt over the bulk of the hill, followed by some fine dirt closer to the ballast. I then sprinkled on thin layers of grass cover using several different colors.
So I got my new Woodland Scenic static grass applicator, the Static King. I was going to build my own, one of the do-it-yourself ones, but when you factor in the time and labor, it didn't seem all that cost effective. So I just bought this one. It does not come with a battery or power supply, but if you are going to use a 9-volt battery, honestly, it kind of sucks. get yourself a power supply. Now, I did buy a Woodland Scenic power supply, but it was out of stock, so I ended up just making my own. Just make sure you're using a 12-volt power supply. The amps doesn't really matter that much as long as it's more than like the 300 milliamps or whatever it is it's going to be to power this thing. This one's like 2.67. One thing to note is most power supplies are center positive, and this one was no exception. So all I did was cut the wire and swap them around, and now it is center negative, and it works just fine. As for grass, I bought 2mm and 4mm Woodland Scenic static grass. Honestly, for the area that I'm doing, this should be probably 7mm because, boy, it is short. And maybe it looks good because it's N scale, but it sure looks short like that. I also got some 2 and 4mm light green, but that'll be used in a slightly different area. But for now, we are going to try to apply this to the layout, and we'll see how it looks. So I tried the 2 and 4mm, and I just didn't like it. I thought it was too short, so I decided to pick up some 7mm, and I think it's going to look a lot better. So we're going to go ahead and finish the rest of it with the 7mm. Alright guys, I think we're going to end the video here. We did get a lot done, but it is taking quite a lot longer than I hoped for. But it is the first time I've done ballast or scenery, so I guess that's to be expected. Now I hope that you stayed to the end of this video because there are a few things that I want to talk about. When you're prepping for paint and ballast, you need to make sure all these little holes in the cork and where you have your feeder lines and the gaps in the foam, all of that needs to be filled up. Because when you do your ballasting, it's just going to sink down in there. Now, I tried using chunks of cork and shoving it in there. It didn't work all that great. I'll have to find a new solution. If you have one, let me know. But all those little spots need to be filled up before you lay your ballast. So I wanted to blend these two colors to get rid of that red shade in this rust paint for my train tracks. And even though they're both acrylic paints, for whatever reason, they did not mix, which might be why I was having such troubles with my airbrush. So either I'm going to have to go with just a single color here, or I'm going to have to find a new color or a new mixture. What I did find was that if you had a good enough base coat on your track ties, which would also stick to your railroad tracks, when you applied your rust color to the tracks itself, it wouldn't have that super red color to it, which is what I was going for. Technically, the templates did work. I just don't know if I'm going to bother to airbrush the track in the future. I may just paint all the rust color on the track by hand, which doesn't come out quite as good as an airbrush, but I do feel like it comes out just fine. For doing the ballast, at least for me, I felt like this little tool was actually quite useful, and it was faster as long as I, gave it a little shake and just went down the way, not too quickly, but it gave a nice even coverage on the middle and the outer edges. One thing that you need to have is a nice soft bristle brush. You'll see this one's like a makeup brush or something, but that spreads that ballast really nicely. And then a hard bristle brush, which I cut down this one just a little bit, right? But that works really good for, cleaning off the ties and around the spikes. One thing I would recommend is when you're brushing it away, make sure the inside part of the track right here is not as deep as you might want to go. It'll look a little thin. The reason for that is when you use your hard bristle brush and clean off those ties in the track, there's going to be a surprising amount of ballast still in the middle that will sink right down. And this is a technique I did more later on, which I think this looks better than when I first started, especially for a main line or a track that gets used quite often. Static grass applicator, well, it works, and it achieved what I wanted to, so that's good. Again, just make sure you're using a 12-volt power supply to get the best results. It does come with its own ground strap, but I found just attaching it to a little T-pin and then you stuff that in to your glue and it works great. I'm very happy I went with the 7mm grass. In N scale, it would be about 3.5 feet tall. I think it looks better than the 2 or 4mm grass. However, it definitely didn't stand up as good as I was hoping for. At least the tall grass didn't. And maybe that's my fault. It could be my technique, or it could be because I'm working with such a small area. Maybe if I was working in a patch like this, it would give me better results. I'm not sure, but yeah, there's quite a few of them that are laying down on its side. You can see where I have it blending into the hillside there. But honestly, I think it's going to look fine once I have it, against the backdrop. But one thing about static grass is it definitely brings a layer of depth to your layout. If you're wondering why I have this foam block right here, it's so I can set down my grain elevator in the exact spot that I want. And if I need to remove it, I can do that anytime. I also made a few updates to the weathering. I got the rust a little bit darker, added some, stains up there for when the train goes through, but that is nice and secure. And boy, does that look good on the layout. So what's next? Well, obviously we have to finish the scenery that we're working on right now. I got a bunch to do around the grain elevator down here. I sure would like to get some trees for this section. I currently haven't found any sticks that are going to work for me, but man, does it sure look good having some green in this. And I look forward to just adding some more detail to it. But if you guys like the video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and thanks for watching.